Before we dive into the exciting, life-changing journey ahead, you'll be joining me on a mission that's nothing like anything Earth has experienced before. Let's take a step into the unknown, where survival is not just about staying alive, but about thriving in conditions beyond imagination. Stay tuned till the end. There's more to this story than you could ever guess. Trust me, you don't want to miss the wild, wild ride. Ryan Walsh sat uncomfortably in a sterile, poorly lit room, the harsh scent of disinfectant filling the air. He fumbled through paperwork that seemed almost absurd. The forms asked for details like his combat experience and other military credentials that didn't seem to reflect the magnitude of what he was about to face. One particularly bizarre question asked about his special abilities. He wrote, "Can open pickle jars without tools," wondering if that would somehow be relevant. The questions seemed trivial at best, but he figured the answers would keep them happy for now. A bored-sounding voice crackled over a speaker, and the woman behind a glass partition called his name. "Mr. Walsh here for the Galactic Defense Coalition exchange program?" she inquired. Ryan nodded, sliding his papers through the slot. "That's right. I'm here for the special assignment," Ryan said, eager for something more exciting than his current post. His fingers drummed nervously on the desk. The woman took a glance at his forms, eyeing him and then looking back at the file. "This is a high-risk program. Are you sure you understand what it involves?" she asked, though her tone betrayed little care. "Yeah, sounds interesting. Says there are travel opportunities and training with alien species," Ryan replied, trying to mask his nervous excitement. The woman exhaled, her fingers scrolling through some data on her screen before she muttered, "This program involves extreme survival training on an alien world. You may want to reconsider." Her eyes scanned his forms one last time. "Then again, the choice is yours. Show up at Transport Bay 7 tomorrow at 0600, but don't say I didn't warn you." She stamped his forms before he could even protest. What Ryan didn't know was that he was about to board a ship to one of the most deadly planets known to the galaxy. Buckle up, because this is just the beginning. The journey ahead will test every limit of survival. Trust me, you'll want to stick around. The journey was far from ordinary, and Ryan Walsh was about to discover that his idea of extreme survival was about to be redefined. Hold tight, this next part is going to get real. 3 months later, Ryan found himself aboard a galactic transport ship that seemed more like a luxury hotel on the inside, despite its mechanical military-grade exterior. It wasn't exactly the pristine spaceship he had imagined in his childhood, but it would do. The passengers, however, were far from what he expected. Instead of aliens straight out of a sci-fi movie, Ryan was surrounded by beings who were all too real. He'd expected big-eyed, gray-skinned creatures, not the variety of galactic species he now saw around him. There was Commander Thal, a towering reptilian humanoid who looked like he could snap Ryan in half without breaking a sweat. His scale color shifted depending on his thoughts, something Ryan found both fascinating and a little unsettling. Dr. Herr, a xenobiologist who resembled a bipedal dolphin, was deeply engrossed in reading a series of texts, likely full of alien survival tactics. Her voice came through a translator that added an underwater echo to every word. Then there was Captain Vor, a predatory insectoid whose insectoid features were enhanced by powerful exoskeletal armor. His forearms moved independently and his eyes were compound lenses capable of seeing in multiple spectrums. He had the kind of presence that made Ryan feel, for the first time, small. Lastly, there was Lieutenant Kem, a member of the Solari species. She looked like a figure made of shimmering crystal, with an almost ethereal glow as she moved. Her species was known for their ability to predict battle outcomes in real time, a useful skill when facing hostile environments like the one they were heading to. Ryan, on the other hand, was just human, brown hair, average height, and slightly below par physical condition from his last fitness test. He had enlisted because college was too expensive, and the recruiter had promised him a ticket to see the world. Well, Ryan thought, looking around, this definitely counts. Alien species, deadly new environments, and survival experts from across the galaxy. Ryan was far from Earth now. But what about him? Would he make it through? Or would the planet prove to be too much for even him? The next challenge awaits. What Ryan didn't yet realize was that his biggest challenge wouldn't be the aliens or even the brutal planet. It would be learning to survive in a world where everything, from the plants to the very air, wanted to kill him. After hours in deep space, The transport ship finally reached its destination, Mortis 7. The planet's surface appeared as if it had been violently torn apart. Jagged mountain ranges twisted skyward, while dark clouds crackled with violent energy, producing lightning in colors Ryan had never seen before. As they descended, the ship shook like a washing machine with a faulty spin cycle. Outside the small port window, Ryan could see the swirling chaos of the planet below, a storm of hostile weather systems battling one another in a chaotic dance of destruction. The pilot's voice came through the intercom, giving everyone final instructions. Final approach to Base Alpha. All personnel prepare for hostile environment protocols. Ryan's fellow trainees scrambled to secure their equipment, each one checking over their high-tech survival suits, oxygen masks, and shields. Meanwhile, Ryan unzipped his jacket. The weather report had warned of possible acid rain, but he felt confident in his lightweight gear. What's the worst that could happen? He thought. As the shuttle hit the surface, the gravity immediately took its toll. Ryan felt as though someone had thrown a few heavy bags of sand into his backpack. It was uncomfortable, but not unbearable. The air was sharp and metallic, burning slightly as it entered his lungs, but after a few deep breaths he began to acclimate. He could hear his fellow trainees struggling, their suits hissing as they adjusted to the heavy atmosphere. For Ryan, it was just another challenge to overcome. They had landed on Mortis 7, a planet that would push Ryan's limits, and his entire species' understanding of what it took to survive. But even with all their technology and training, no one was prepared for what came next. Stay tuned to find out what happens when survival becomes a game of pure instinct. The planet was alive, but not in the way Ryan was used to. Here life was more dangerous, more aggressive, and everything around them was looking for its next meal. The orientation briefing at Base Alpha was less of a lecture and more of a cautionary tale. Colonel Reeves, the grizzled veteran of many such missions, outlined the dangers of Mortis 7 in excruciating detail. "This planet is a death trap," he said, pointing to various displays showing monstrous creatures and deadly weather systems. "Every inch of this world is hostile." Ryan's eyes widened as he took in the sheer scope of what they were about to face. The planet's predators were nothing like the usual wildlife back home. There were pack-hunting plants that could slice through the toughest materials, predatory insects the size of cars, and the infamous phase bears, creatures that could teleport and tear through anything in their path. As if that wasn't enough, the planet's weather was as unpredictable as the wildlife. Sulfuric acid rain, electrical storms, and temperature swings that could break any unshielded equipment. Ryan's initial excitement was slowly beginning to fade into uncertainty. How could anyone survive this? The briefing was over, but the real lesson was just beginning. With all the deadly creatures and hostile weather, Ryan had to quickly adapt. Would his survival skills, honed from years of training, be enough to make it through the first day? Find out in the next chapter of his journey. With danger lurking around every corner, the real test of survival began. But Ryan had a surprising advantage. He didn't panic, and that made all the difference. The first day of survival training on Mortis 7 was an eye-opener. As soon as they stepped outside the reinforced walls of Base Alpha, the planet made its intentions clear. The air smelled thick and dangerous with an odd metallic taste. The ground beneath them was uneven, pocked with pits that seemed to move like they were alive. The landscape seemed to pulse with a menacing energy, as though the planet itself was aware of their every move. But it wasn't just the environment that posed a challenge. It was the creatures, too. A loud screech echoed through the trees, and suddenly, Ryan was face to face with something that resembled a massive wolf. Except it was made entirely of plant matter, with razor-sharp thorns instead of fur. The others froze in terror, but Ryan simply raised his hand. "Stay still," he said, his voice calm despite the danger. The creature paused, sniffed the air, and then disappeared into the undergrowth. As the group continued, they encountered more deadly surprises. Trees that attacked on sight, ground that shifted unpredictably beneath their feet. Yet Ryan moved through it all with a kind of easy confidence that unnerved his companions. He wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. By the end of the first day, Ryan had already adapted in ways no one expected. His calm under pressure was becoming legendary, and even the seasoned veterans were beginning to take notes. But the challenges would only grow harder from here. What would happen when they faced the planet's deadliest threats? You'll have to keep reading to find out. The air around Base Alpha crackled with tension as the team embarked on their first major survival exercise. The objective was simple: cross a stretch of terrain while avoiding local predators. As they moved forward, the ground beneath their feet seemed to shift, and the sounds of distant growls and hissing filled the air. Ryan felt the adrenaline kick in, but he didn't let it overwhelm him. Stay calm, keep moving, he thought, sticking to the basics he'd learned in military training. But things took a sharp turn when they encountered the phase bears. The sound of something large moving through the underbrush reached their ears, and suddenly the entire team froze. Colonel Reeves, eyes wide, motioned for everyone to remain still. "It's a phase bear," he whispered. "They hunt by detecting thermal signatures. Don't move." Ryan, however, had already been studying the movements of the creature. He knew that staying completely still was the key, but he couldn't help but glance at the massive creature as it materialized in front of them, its body shifting from one location to another, defying the rules of physics. Its enormous claws gleamed with a deadly promise. The others stood frozen, but Ryan felt something like excitement bubbling inside him. He was in a situation where his instincts were all he had left, and it felt good to rely on them. As the phase bear watched them, Ryan knew the only way out was to keep calm, keep still, and wait. But was everyone going to make it out of this encounter alive? The tension was building. Stay tuned to see how Ryan and his team handle this lethal challenge. When every step you take could be your last, it's easy to forget the simplest survival tactics. But for Ryan, staying grounded in what he knew made all the difference. By the time day 3 rolled around, Ryan was already becoming the team's unofficial survival leader. The aliens, despite their vast technological advancements, were beginning to struggle with the extreme conditions of Mortis 7. They had crossed the notorious Singing Valley, where deadly gas pockets exploded without warning, sending blasts strong enough to send soldiers flying into the sky. The standard military procedure was to use advanced seismic sensors and bomb disposal suits, but Ryan had a simpler approach. "Listen to the ground," he had said, stepping cautiously forward. "It makes different sounds before it explodes, like ice cracking before it breaks." As the others prepared their gear, Ryan moved steadily through the valley, using his sharp hearing to detect the gas pockets before they could trigger an explosion. Behind him, the team followed his lead, one by one using the rhythm of the land to avoid disaster. The valley had been a test of patience and awareness, but it wasn't the worst thing they'd face. As the group moved on, the environment was only going to get more hostile. How would they handle what came next? Keep following their journey to find out. Just when Ryan thought he'd seen it all, the forest threw a new challenge his way: trees that hunted. The dangers of Mortis 7 had only just begun. The team's journey into the forest of aggressive trees was an eye-opening experience for everyone. The trees, unlike anything Ryan had ever seen, didn't rely on photosynthesis. They were predators, capable of moving their branches with lightning speed to impale anything that came too close. Some of the trees even had thorns so sharp they could puncture the toughest body armor. The usual protocol for handling such a dangerous environment was simple: send in a squad with chainsaws and flamethrowers. But Ryan had a different idea. "Anyone have a pocket knife?" he asked, surprising everyone with his nonchalance. The trees, which had been steadily attacking, suddenly seemed confused by Ryan's calm approach. He was able to find a path through the forest, using the tree's own aggressive behavior against them. He made a cutting from a tree that had tried to stab a passing bird, joking that it would look great back home. The others, still unsure about Ryan's strategy, found that his calm and resourceful approach was the key to survival. As the team exited the forest, the aggressive trees seemed to back off, leaving them unscathed. It was a moment that made Ryan realize something. Sometimes the best way to survive was to understand your environment rather than fight it. Ryan had just walked through a forest where everything, from the trees to the birds, was trying to kill him, but he didn't just survive. He thrived. What would come next in this unforgiving world? Stay with us as the challenges continue to grow in intensity. When faced with the world's most dangerous river, most would consider retreating. But for Ryan, it was another challenge to conquer. Would this be the end of his journey, or just another part of his survival test? The next challenge was the Screaming River. It was aptly named as the water didn't just move, it screamed, a terrifying sound created by the electrical activity that ran through the river. The creatures inhabiting the river were massive electric eels the size of trains. Not only were they dangerous, but the river itself was toxic enough to dissolve metal. Most of Ryan's fellow trainees were hesitant, doubting their ability to cross the river. Captain Vor's exoskeleton was no help here, and Dr. Finn's equipment was insufficient to withstand the river's power. But Ryan, he didn't hesitate. "Looks like a good place for a swim," he said casually, beginning to remove his boots. His team looked at him as though he were insane, but Ryan remained unfazed. He'd been around dangerous environments before. This river was no different. Ignoring the current and the electric eels, Ryan waded into the river, his body fully submerged as he swam across with ease. His calm demeanor seemed to lull the eels into ignoring him, and he reached the other side with a nonchalance that left his fellow trainees stunned. Ryan had just done what no one else dared to. He crossed the screaming river without hesitation. His journey was far from over, but with each test he proved that the real key to surviving wasn't advanced technology or heavy armor. It was mindset. What would come next? The challenge of Murder Canyon was waiting. The final test was here, Murder Canyon. It was everything that had made Mortis 7 dangerous packed into one location, and it would push every one of Ryan's skills to the limit. Could he make it through? When the team was dropped into Murder Canyon for the final survival exercise, the environment was just as deadly as it was notorious. The rocky terrain seemed to pulse beneath their feet, and the air was thick with a strange acrid smell. The rocks moved when you weren't looking directly at them, and the atmosphere felt like it was alive with hostile energy. Ryan's strategy was simple. Stay calm, stay focused, and use the landscape to your advantage. As the others scrambled to set up shelter, Ryan simply surveyed the area, marking the best locations to collect water and set up camp. By the time the rest of the team had started to struggle with the environment's demands, Ryan had already set up a fully functional campsite. His fire burned brightly and the perimeter was secure. He'd used the planet's hostility to his advantage, turning the very terrain against itself. Ryan had faced down everything Mortis 7 had thrown at him, and now, as the final exercise drew to a close, the real question was, would he be the only one to survive? The end of this survival test was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where Ryan's understanding of survival would change the galaxy forever. After everything Ryan had endured, the galaxy's perception of humanity would never be the same. What had started as a grueling survival mission had turned into a galactic awakening. Ryan was about to discover that his actions had reverberated far beyond Mortis 7. By the end of the final survival exercise, Ryan had completed what was supposed to be an impossible mission. He had made it through Mortis 7's chaotic environment, with nothing more than a calm attitude and a resourceful mind. The others? Well, their experiences had varied. Some had broken down mentally and physically, unable to cope with the constant, overwhelming dangers. Ryan, however, had thrived. The extraction team arrived to find him calmly preparing his breakfast at his campsite, as if he had just returned from a routine day of hiking. His fellow trainees were disoriented, suffering from the extremes of the planet's atmosphere. But Ryan had already adapted. He was at peace with his environment. While his comrades suffered in confusion and panic, Ryan's readings remained steady and relaxed. Dr. Santos, who had been assigned to evaluate the participants after the exercise, was in disbelief when she reviewed the results. Ryan's psychological profile was off the charts. His stress levels had dropped to nearly non-existent levels, while his teammates were at the brink of total collapse. Ryan's effortless survival on Mortis 7 was a testament to human resilience, yet the galaxy, still unsure of what to make of this strange species, was forced to reconsider its entire understanding of survival. Earth had just made a lasting impression on the galactic community. What would the future hold for Ryan and humanity? Stick with us to find out how this incredible journey redefines everything. As the days passed, Ryan and the rest of the trainees were monitored by the Galactic Defense Coalition's top scientists and psychologists. The results were staggering. The tests had been designed to assess how each species could handle extreme environments, but Ryan had approached each challenge with an unshakable confidence that left the experts scrambling for answers. Earth, a planet thought to be full of relatively fragile life forms, was now reclassified by the Galactic Defense Coalition as a Class-13 Deathworld, one of the most dangerous planets in existence. The Council had never considered a world like Earth as anything other than a curiosity. But after observing Ryan's performance, they realized Earth was a unique anomaly. A world where the survival instincts of its dominant species had adapted to its hostile and unpredictable environment in ways that no other species could even fathom. Ryan, of course, took it all in stride. He was more focused on the coffee machine in the cafeteria than the latest galactic reclassification. "What's next?" he asked, sitting casually at the table, a half-eaten sandwich in front of him. Dr. Santos, who had spent weeks cataloging the results and reading through psychological assessments, looked at Ryan with a new understanding. "You've just redefined survival for the entire galaxy," she said, though her tone was a mixture of awe and disbelief. "They're offering us a treaty." Ryan blinked. "A treaty? For what?" "They want Earth to join the Galactic Defense Coalition," Dr. Santos explained, her voice still tinged with confusion. "In exchange for your unique survival abilities, humanity could play a crucial role in combating the Void Swarm." Ryan leaned back in his chair, a grin spreading across his face. "Void Swarm? Sounds like something out of a bad sci-fi movie. But yeah, sure, sign me up." The Void Swarm, a deadly alien species consuming entire solar systems, had proven nearly impossible to defeat using traditional military tactics. Now the Galactic Defense Coalition was hoping that humanity's unconventional survival strategies could provide a solution. As Ryan's story spread across the galaxy, the Galactic Council was forced to consider something they had never entertained before. Could humans, a species once thought to be an afterthought in the galactic hierarchy, hold the key to a survival tactic that could save entire star systems? From a survival exercise that no one thought he could complete to a galactic scale, redefinition of humanity's place in the universe. Ryan Walsh had turned his experience on Mortis 7 into a defining moment for the human race. As Earth was officially welcomed into the Galactic Defense Coalition, it seemed that the greatest challenge of all, interstellar survival, was only just beginning. But Ryan, ever the optimist, couldn't help but wonder, do they have good coffee out there? The treaty was signed and Earth's place in the galactic community was secured. But the real question was, what role would Ryan Walsh play in a war that spanned the stars? As Earth's newest, and perhaps most unexpected asset, Ryan was about to face challenges that would redefine the future of the galaxy. Once the Galactic Defense Coalition officially welcomed Earth into its ranks, Ryan's life took a sharp turn. The planet, once seen as a backwater world on the edge of the galaxy, was now a key player in the Coalition's fight against the Void Swarm. But as Ryan soon realized, the galactic leaders had no interest in simply adding Earth's population to their ranks. They wanted him, Ryan Walsh, the human who had turned an impossible survival world into his personal playground. In the days following the signing of the treaty, Ryan found himself thrust into a whirlwind of military briefings, strategic discussions, and galactic policy meetings. It wasn't long before he was pulled into an elite group of survival specialists, working alongside the top minds from dozens of alien species. The task ahead was monumental. The Void Swarm, a horrific alien force that consumed entire star systems, was advancing rapidly. They had already wiped out several civilizations that were far more advanced than humanity, and the Coalition's traditional methods had failed to slow them down. But Ryan's unconventional survival tactics, the ones he had used to navigate the hostile environment of Mortis 7, were now viewed as the key to stopping the swarm. Ryan's survival skills had earned him a place in the fight against the galaxy's greatest threat. But how would the human approach a battle on this scale? He had survived alien worlds. Could he survive war on an interstellar level? Stay tuned as Ryan's journey takes an even more dangerous turn. As Ryan prepared for his first official mission, the full scale of the Void Swarm's threat became apparent. The Coalition's war effort had relied heavily on advanced technology and brute force, but Ryan's approach was different. He wasn't interested in sophisticated weapons or complex strategies. His focus was always on adaptability and instinct. During his first meeting with the Coalition's top strategists, Ryan couldn't help but notice the overwhelming weight of the situation. His fellow officers were alien species, each with their own advanced tactics and knowledge. but none of them seemed to have the same mental flexibility that Ryan brought to the table. "We need to think beyond our usual tactics," Ryan said, interrupting a lengthy discussion about deploying military fleets to intercept the Void Swarm's advance. "We can't just fight them in the same way. We need to outthink them." The room fell silent. For a moment, no one seemed to understand what Ryan was getting at, but he wasn't going to back down. "I've been through environments where the goal wasn't just to survive, it was to outlast. You have to adapt to your environment. Think of the Void Swarm as just another environment, one that we need to understand." Ryan had just taken the first step toward proving that his unorthodox methods could reshape the way the Coalition fought its battles. Would they embrace his ideas, or would the galactic military leaders dismiss him as a mere outlier? The next phase of the war was about to begin, and Ryan was ready to take the lead. When Ryan's methods were put to the test in his first field mission, no one expected much. But as always, Ryan had a plan, and it wasn't like anything the galaxy had seen before. Could his unconventional approach really work in an all-out war? The answer would come faster than anyone expected. The mission was clear: intercept a small, Void Swarm fleet that was headed toward a strategic trade route. It was a relatively low-risk operation compared to some of the larger galactic battles the Coalition had fought, but it was important. A small victory here could buy time for reinforcements to arrive. Ryan's new team was a mix of seasoned soldiers from various species, each with their own expertise. Yet, despite their years of experience, there was something about Ryan's presence that immediately set him apart. While the others were preparing for a traditional combat approach, Ryan was preparing for something far different. "I've been thinking," Ryan began as he gathered the team for a final briefing. "The Void Swarm isn't like any other enemy. They're not just coming for us, they're coming to destroy the resources we rely on. If we attack them head-on, we're just feeding into their strategy. We need to think differently." The alien soldiers who were used to conventional strategies exchanged skeptical glances. "What do you propose, human?" asked Captain Vore, his insectoid form towering over Ryan. "We don't need to destroy them directly," Ryan said with a smirk. "We just need to slow them down. I've been thinking about how they operate, how they think. The key is making them waste their resources and exhaust their numbers. I have a plan." Ryan's strategy was bold, but no one really understood how it would work. As the team moved toward the battlefield, the tension was palpable. Could Ryan's wild idea really turn the tide? This mission would prove whether his survival instincts could be adapted to galactic warfare. Part 13 continued. The unconventional tactics. The plan Ryan proposed was deceptively simple. Use the environment to their advantage, create confusion, and force the Void Swarm to expend resources on something other than their main objective. It wasn't about direct confrontation. It was about leading them into a trap. The team used decoys, ships that mimicked the energy signature of valuable Coalition trade vessels. They scattered these decoys across a vast expanse of space, drawing the Void Swarm fleet into a chaotic pursuit. Once the swarm was spread out and scattered, Ryan's team would move in. "Now we wait," Ryan said as the plan went into motion. The tension on the ship was thick as they waited for the Void Swarm to take the bait. The countdown was on, and every moment that passed felt like an eternity. The Void Swarm fleet took the bait, just as Ryan predicted. They pursued the decoys, each ship isolated and spread thin. With their forces scattered, Ryan led his team into a swift, coordinated attack. They picked off stragglers, forcing the Void Swarm to waste precious time and energy on what seemed like a losing battle. At the end of the skirmish, Ryan's team had captured several Void Swarm ships without taking heavy losses. The swarm had expended far more resources than they had intended, and the Coalition had secured an important victory. As Ryan stood in the aftermath of the skirmish, the other soldiers began to realize something. Ryan's approach wasn't just about fighting. It was about thinking ahead, anticipating the enemy's moves and playing the long game. With his first successful mission under his belt, Ryan's unconventional methods had proven their worth. But as the war with the Void Swarm escalated, the stakes would get higher. Could Ryan continue to outsmart the enemy on a galactic scale? The next challenge was already waiting. With his success in the first skirmish, Ryan's reputation within the Galactic Defense Coalition was rising fast. But success in one battle didn't guarantee a win in the next. Ryan was about to face a new challenge, one that would test not just his survival instincts but his ability to lead an entire army. Could he adapt his tactics to a full-scale galactic war? After the skirmish against the Void Swarm, Ryan's approach to warfare was quickly gaining recognition within the Galactic Defense Coalition. His ability to think outside the box had earned him the trust of the Coalition's top generals and strategists. They had seen his success in the smaller, more tactical engagements, and now they needed him for something bigger, a full-scale operation to defend one of the Coalition's most vital colonies. The mission was critical. The Void Swarm had identified the colony as a key target and was already on its way. The colony's location was crucial. It was a central hub for trade and military resources, and its loss would severely cripple the Coalition's ability to wage war. But this time, the stakes were higher. The Void Swarm was bringing everything they had to bear against the colony, and the Coalition needed a strategy that could turn the tide. Ryan's job was clear. He was to help lead the defense. When Ryan arrived at the War Council, he could see the gravity of the situation in the faces of the generals. They were all seasoned soldiers, experts in conventional warfare. But Ryan's reputation for unconventional tactics had earned him a seat at the table. "We need to prepare for the Void Swarm's attack," said General Thal, a towering reptilian commander, his scales shimmering with tension. "But I fear traditional tactics will fail us. We need something new." Ryan leaned forward, his eyes scanning the map of the colony. The Void Swarm was already closing in on their position and time was running out. "I think I've got something," Ryan said, his voice calm but determined. "We're not just fighting an enemy, we're fighting a strategy. They move in waves, predictable waves. If we turn their own tactics against them, we'll have a chance." Ryan had been called upon to save the colony, but he wasn't going to do it by following the rules. Would his unorthodox plan be enough to stop the Void Swarm from wiping out an entire population? The countdown was ticking. Stay tuned to see how Ryan's next bold move will shake the galaxy. Ryan's plan to defend the colony was built on the same principles that had guided his survival on Mortis 7. Use the environment, force the enemy into unfavorable positions, and outsmart them at every turn. The Void Swarm had a predictable pattern. They attacked in waves, overwhelming their opponents with sheer numbers. But Ryan believed that if they could create a series of obstacles that fragmented the Void Swarm's forces, they would have a fighting chance. The first step of his plan was to create false targets. They would deploy decoys in the outer orbit of the colony, mimicking the signature of high-value assets. The Void Swarm, driven by their instinct to destroy valuable resources, would focus their attack on these decoys. Meanwhile, Ryan's forces would be positioned closer to the colony itself, ready to strike when the swarm had spread itself thin. Next, they would use a series of environmental disruptions, asteroid fields and electromagnetic pulses, to slow the Void Swarm's advance and disrupt their communications. The goal was not to destroy them outright, but to fragment their forces and create chaos. As the battle began, Ryan's plan went into motion. The Void Swarm took the bait, focusing all their attention on the decoys, and the Coalition's forces moved in. Ryan's team used guerrilla tactics, hitting the swarm's scattered forces in quick pinpoint strikes. The Void Swarm, disoriented and spread thin, was unable to organize a coordinated defense. It was an exhausting battle, and the Void Swarm fought fiercely. But by the end of the engagement, Ryan's strategy had paid off. The colony was secured, and the swarm's forces had been decimated. The victory was bittersweet. The Coalition had won, but it was clear that this war was far from over. Ryan's victory on the colony had proven that his unconventional tactics could work on a galactic scale. But the war against the Void Swarm was just beginning. What would Ryan do next, and how would the galaxy's leaders react to his growing influence? The next chapter in the war had just begun.